Well, welcome in, Livvy and Joe. We're so thankful that you guys took the time out to join the podcast and talk about something that is so important. I think, my sister-in-law made this comment, and I think it's one of the most important I've ever heard, and that is the most important part of communication is understanding. Mm-hmm. And so if we don't understand what each other is saying, then we're really just talking, but we're not communicating. And so I'm so thankful that you guys agreed to come on here and to get a dialogue started. How can we better communicate? Not just communicate with our friends, but communicate with that generation that's in front of us and that generation that's behind us. So as I said in the intro, we have with us today Joe Ellis from Beavercreek, Ohio. He's representing the old people. And then Livvy McLean, who lives in Clermont, Florida, and she's representing the teens. I think Livvy said her birthday is coming up soon, so we may have to see
tomorrow.
So my wife's birthday is tomorrow.
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
And we have a very special episode of the Agape Leaders podcast tomorrow. So for those of you who are listening to this now, that was quite some time ago. Go back and listen to the May 2nd Agape Leaders podcast, where I talk about 5 reasons why I love my wife. I think you'll enjoy that. But let's stay focused on this episode right now. And so I would like to invite you, Livvy, to kind of help us understand what's the best way for us to communicate well with teens. Like from your perspective, what are some insights that you can give us?
Totally. Just to start, I'm a junior, a full AP student. I've played soccer, ran track, I swim currently. I'm in musical theater. So I've definitely interacted with kids in my generation from all walks of life. I've known theater kids, I've known the athletes, I've known the nerds, and it just seems to me that each and every kid from those different walks of life just have such a struggle with, being understood to fully who they are by their parents, by just older figures in their lives. And I've seen how it really affects them. And I've seen in my own life how it affects me when I try to, communicate with my parents and communicate with older figures in my life. Because, as we all know, like life is not completely easy and you're not supposed to figure it out when you're 16. And to have those figures in your life just guiding you and telling you where to go is so important. But if they don't really understand what you're going through from the start, it's going to be impossible to get that through. So I think the main thing with my generation is that we're very misunderstood. And when we try to reach out and talk to older people to kind of understand us better, it's less of a conversation and more of just kind of discipline, we feel like. It's almost like we open about our feelings and we're not really heard. We're just kind of told, oh, well, why are you doing that? That's not what we did. And that's incorrect, and unfortunately with us, we've grown up in this completely different age of technology and social media where we're being fed that those things that we're practicing, these new ideas, these new genders even, those are correct. So we have one group through technology telling us to be one thing, and then a complete other group telling us, no, that's wrong. And it's hard, it's stressful, and our brains aren't fully developed. We don't even know really who we are yet. So to go through that, it's a painful, uneasy process. And I think that has led to so many things that the older generation sees like an exponential growth in my generation of depression, anxiety, suicide rates, self-harm. And I feel like almost too, social media has just led to this like self-hatred. And I think it's harder for the older generation to understand that because, they just grew up with oh, hey, this is Bob from downtown, and these are all the people in my small town. But every single day, we see a new person from across the globe, across the country, to compare ourselves to, and we feel like we're not enough. So I think what I'm trying to get at is that we really feel like we're not listened to, and our parents, our older figures, they can't put themselves in our shoes because it's a completely different mold to put yourself into. No one has ever grown up this way except for my generation.
And that's a fact. That's really good. That's really good. If you guys see me, like, it looks like I'm typing, I'm taking notes. So.
Yeah, no problem. I have my pen right here, so don't think I'm on my phone, because that's probably a misunderstanding.
Not in here, not today. Praise God. Joe?
Well, first thing I want to say, just meeting Livvy, happy birthday tomorrow, and to Sunny tomorrow as well. I've had the privilege of working with youth for most of my adult life. I worked in children's homes, was kind of like a foster parent, worked in the schools, coached along, Greg, with you. And I've been around youth a lot. And I'm also at an age, as we said, I'm not quite 40 yet. I'm in my mid-30s, but I've had a lot of mentors in my life. And so I've been with a lot of older generations. I've seen a lot of younger. And I've seen technology literally explode from the time when I was in high school. When I was in high school, we had phones, but we just played Snake and stuff on them, and they didn't really go on the internet, and you didn't have that as much. But there's one key thing in there. One thing I've always seen with youth is, and with the older generations, is they don't talk with each other. Like you said, they don't listen. And I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about what's going on with each generation. When you become an adolescent, youth, early teens, you hit these, I call them explosions of emotions. Each one being bigger and scarier than the last. You're happier, you're sadder, you're angrier. It's taboo, but it should be talked about more in church. There's sexual feelings they're exploding. And it literally feels like your world is about to just crumble on you. And it's scary. I think it's okay to say you can be scared with that stuff happening. And you look around at your parents, grandparents, teachers, hopefully, youth pastors in church, and you look at them and they don't seem to be dealing with these types of emotions that are happening on a daily basis with you and your peers. And that's a misnomer. It's not that they aren't dealing with these emotions, even the same emotions. They have something that the younger generation doesn't experience: time. They've dealt with it longer. And it's kind of like riding a bike. When you first learn to ride a bike, it's the scariest thing ever. You're going faster than when you would be walking. You're just trying everything you can to stay upright. But everything's shaky. You can just barely just pay attention to one aspect of it. And eventually you get a little bit better and better, but it takes a long time to get used to it. But once you do, then you're riding down the street, no problem. You might be even good enough to be able to do it without holding on to the handlebars. And you just get this sense of, I can do this, without even thinking about it. And you're able to do it a lot easier. And that's because you've done it for a long time. You've learned how to deal with those emotions that come up daily. And so that helps more. The other side of that, though, is adults, as we've learned to deal with this, you kind of forget how scary it was on that first day. You forget what it was like to be in those shoes, to have those emotions hit you, to have that scary experience happen. And it kind of just, you forget it. And so when you're dealing with the younger generations, with the teens, things like that, and you see them struggling, there's a loss of empathy, and there's a loss of remembering what it was to be in those shoes. And ultimately, I feel it is the responsibility of the older generation to mold and initiate meaningful conversation with the younger generation. And I think it's important to note for the older and the younger generations, it's okay to reach out for help. It's okay to ask for help. And listening is the main thing, that we need to listen to each other more. And it's about asking questions. It's about asking questions of each other, not just about giving answers. And I think you made a great point. It's harder now, especially for younger generations, to listen. It's harder because we have these things in our hands that we carry around all day that have 95 distractions in them. And whether that's good or bad, there's a lot of good that's come of technology. It's made life easier, but we've lost listening techniques. We've lost the hard work that comes from certain things, and some of that includes listening techniques.
Yeah,
and we just need to take the
personal.
Yeah, we've lost the time of talking with others, and in particular, talking with other generations. And we need to realize that each generation has strengths. We need to see the value of and the worth of each generation. Older generations don't need to act like younger generations are dumb because they haven't been through something. That's not fair. But on the other side, there's new stuff, new technology coming out all the time. And the younger generations need to realize that the older generations aren't dumb for not knowing how to use this new technology. There needs to be, talk between the two. And admitting that you don't know these things is not weakness. And a lot of times we act like not knowing something makes us weak. I find that admitting that we have more to learn in life is where the real strength starts. You need to be a sponge. No matter what walk of life you're in, you need to be more teachable. And older generations, I think we need to live more authentically in front of younger generations. There's a great professor I like to listen to, Ed Stetzer. He's a professor at Wheaton College. And this goes back to just, I think, how important faith is. Modeling a real, authentic faith is more powerful than just your kids getting your kids to behave like Christians. And so we need to model what it is for these younger generations in our walk of life. You need to walk the walk in front of them, authentic life. And yeah, that's kind of where I started with that. Just on my thoughts with that.
Yeah, no, that was great. I liked the bike analogy a lot. I wrote some notes down about that. How I would basically put my generation into terms of the bike is that with the older generation, I feel as if though, it starts out shaky, you don't really know what you're doing, but then you kind of get on track. You get that sense of self. You have people encouraging you around you. You grow up, you learn, you make mistakes, but you get on that track. And what I would kind of say for my generation, just with social media technology, a huge influx of pornography and sexual music and all of that is almost like if you were trying to ride this bike and get started and you have people, air horns, throwing tomatoes at you, you got to speed up here. You have distractions over here. You have a new bike over there saying, hey, ride me instead of this one, I guess I'm making that analogy to just say when we're trying to get this sense of self, we have so many things calling our name, whether it's a different sexuality, a different identity, whether it's a different friend group, a mold you have to fit in. Whereas I feel like with the older generations, it wasn't as complicated for them. They weren't exposed to all this just immorality and this worldliness as much. I mean, like it's just been so elevated now with my generation. And I would also go on to say that, like you mentioned that you had a lot of mentors through your life, and that's amazing. I've been blessed with amazing parents and some great teachers and coaches in my life. But I think what I've noticed for a lot of kids in my generation is that their mentor has become technology. Their mentor has become social media. A lot of kids in my generation struggle with either fatherlessness, estranged parents, all of these different things. So their crutch has become their phone. And they look at what someone posts, they look at what this celebrity stands for or what they believe in, and they're like, oh, okay, I should follow that because they have no one else to follow. So I really liked the bike analogy because I just kind of found a way to kind of work in my generation. And I think too, what people are going to have to just realize is that sometimes my generation just kind of wants to be heard and not really given advice right away.
I like that.
I know for me, when I'm stressed out, sad, upset, dealing with something, sometimes it's just amazing to just talk to someone about it, not get their input, but just to have someone like listen, and when the older generation just tries to step in right away and be like, well, here's why you shouldn't do that. It says here in the Bible, or this is what we did back in my day. It's more of like did you even listen to what I said? And when my generation hears that, whereas I feel like a better approach when we bring up these conversations of, hey, mom, I'm struggling with sexual immorality. Hey, mom, I'm struggling with drugs. I'm struggling with this. It's not don't do that. That's illegal. Don't do that. You'll get pregnant. But more of oh, I'm here to listen. Why are you struggling with this? How can I help? How can we solve this together? I think that's just it's a huge instrument in kind of like lessening this gap.
Yeah, that's really good. I have a question for you, Livvy.
Yeah.
Yes. Because this is a very common thing I've heard, and I really want to get your feedback on this. The older generations, they'll say, put the phone down. What do you say to them when their response is, put the phone down or turn the phone off, and they think it's just as simple as that? Because you made some comments. You said their mentor is their phone. Mm-hmm. So how do you what do you want to say to that older generation when people make that? It's just so simple. Just put the phone down.
Honestly, I would say give me a reason to. I think a lot of times when kids are buried in their phones, at home especially, it's because they feel isolated from their parents, or they feel burnout on their parents, burnout on their family, and their phone just feels like a place where they can escape and just zone in on that one thing and shut out everything else. So I would say to the older generation, well, if you want me to put my phone down, then give me a reason to talk to you. Give me a reason to want to put it down and want to engage with you instead of a million other people on my app, I know for me, especially when I'm upset with my parents, when I don't feel like talking to them, when I'm burnt out on my day, I bury myself in my phone 100%. It's not the right thing to do, but it just kind of feels like second nature to us because our whole lives, we've just grown up with this technology to be a crutch on whenever we want to shut down, So I would say to them, yeah, give me a reason to like, hey, put your phone down. Come talk to me. Let's take a walk. What's troubling you? A lot of times it's put your phone down. That's bad for you. Now clean the dishes. Put your phone down. That's bad for you. Do your homework. It's like, come on. Like, put my phone down and have a conversation with me. Tell me what's wrong, And it sounds funny, but like that really is how it comes across sometimes to my generation. And I would say too, if you don't want to love from a distance, if you want to be close to your kid, then you can't listen from a distance either. So, if you're kind of like barely hearing what your kid is trying to tell you that they're struggling with, or not really interested in what your kid is really doing behind the scenes, then, they're not going to want to have that close, like intimate relationship with you, So I think listening comes from a place of love. So if you don't love that person enough to put yourself in their shoes, then you're sure as heck not going to listen.
That's really, really good. Joe, as you hear her talk about it, and you may not speak directly to the parenting side of it, but you certainly speak to you're a leader and you lead teens, and you've probably had that conversation. Hey, put your phone down. Hey, pay attention over here. So what are some things that go through your mind as to maybe why there's trouble, why it's difficult for older people to have a valid reason?
that was kind of my question. I mentioned in there, just being more of a living, your faith, and not just trying to speak straight at the youth. Not to say, hey, just do this because, but living, showing them what a life is that you want them to model after. But my question, I guess, for Livvy is if they are doing that, if they are living correctly, if they're doing correctly, and what would you say? Because I always say, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, or the new shiny thing is what gets the attention. When a parent's doing all they can and they're actually trying to talk or stuff, what things would you like them to be doing specifically to get them to, I guess, as you would say, replace the mentor that is the phone, to get back in that place of mentorship with the kids? I mean, how do they reach that?
It's so hard because obviously parents have to discipline their kids at the end of the day. If you want to raise a strong kid, you're not going to let them just smoke weed and go party and all of that all the time. But they really do just have to put themselves at a place of like no judgment. Like, they've got to really just put themselves in a place where they're not going to just discipline their kid right away, or at least they need to make their kid feel like that, because every single time a kid goes into a conversation where the parent's like, hey, can you talk to me? In the back of their head, it's like, well, if I actually tell them the truth, I'm going to be killed. If I actually tell them what's really going on, they're going to ground me forever, And so I think too, why it's so hard to communicate through these generations is fear. Kids are scared of what their parents are going to think of them. Kids are scared of what's going to happen once their parents find out they're struggling with these things, doing certain things. And it's just got to be almost like, hey, I might discipline you in the moment for this, but I do really want to work through this with you. I think parents need to go into conversations with less of just like disciplinary action, but also with resolution. I think parents need to go into this.
They need to explain why it's bad.
They need to explain why it's bad and what they'll do to help you through it, Okay. Because if you're only saying, hey, this is bad, it's like, oh, I already know that, Mom. You told me that 1,000,000 times. This is why I'm not talking to you about it. But if they're more of like, here, this is why it's bad, but this is why I'm going to help you because I love you, because I want the best for you. I think kids feel a little hopeless when they talk to their parents because they know it's just going to be discipline. And I think it would really help conversations to actually be effective if they knew their parents were like, hey, no, it's not just going to be discipline. It's going to be resolution.
Right. Well, here's my ultimate question.
Hold on real quick. I just want to, because I want to stay on that word. When you say there's going to be resolution, I think if I'm putting words in your mouth, take them out. But you're saying resolution, but it's a resolution that we both came to.
Completely.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, say a kid was struggling with self-harm or bad thoughts. It'd be like, hey, so I'm going to discipline you in the moment and kind of take away your social media so that this doesn't trigger you to stay on this path. But I'm also going to get you help, and I'm also going to check in on you every day and walk through this with you so you're not alone, and so that you know that I'm doing this out of a place of love. Because if it's, hey, it's just your phone, it's social media, get that away. It's just going to be like, do you even really care? This is a short-term fix for a long-term problem, arguably. So I think it's definitely a two-factor. It's you and the parent fixing this problem. If it's just the kid fixing the problem's not going to get fixed. And if it's just the parent trying and the kid's not putting in effort, the kid will just be sneaky and find other ways to do it. 100%.
Sorry about that, Joe.
That was kind of my question. The last part you hit on there, the parent coming at the back, because ironically enough, being on the other side, I guess, of the fence for long enough, I've seen plenty of parents where they feel like they've done the most they can. They were trying to come to the resolution, but they had the teen that was just not willing to do it. They had in their ear social media and different influencers, if you will, on YouTube, Twitch, other things, basically disagreeing with what the parents were saying. What do you think the fix is for that? Do you think that social media is doing more harm than good at your age? I mean, what if it completely conflicts with what the parent is trying to do or say? And I know a lot of parents feel like they don't stand a chance when they're just one voice against the multitude of many on social media.
Mm-hmm. I would probably take into account when the parents asking, like, what am I doing wrong? Why can't I get through this kid's head? Is just take into account like what their relationship is really built upon. Because I know many parents can think that they're close with that kid, but they don't even know who that kid really is, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think it takes into a lot of factors to getting close with the kid, but really involving yourself in that kid's friend group, figuring out like what their interests are and stuff. I mean, if you're distant, if you don't even know who your kid's best friend is, if you don't know what their interests are, like they're not going to talk to you about anything. And as much as you try, as much as you knock on your door and say, hey, can we talk? Your kid's not going to respond. So also too, you know, are they always approaching that kid with an accusatory tone? Are they always saying, hey, are you okay? You're always off. Hey, are you okay? You're always depressed. You're always this. You know, by saying words like always and by just pointing the finger, it's going to push that kid into a corner and make them resent you, you know? But I understand too that there are cases where, like, you know, the kid's been blessed with amazing parents all their life and they're just simply not a good kid. And that's where I would say social media has ruined my generation, 100%. I don't care who argues, oh, it's exposed me to more friends, I get to keep in touch long distance. It has ruined my generation. It has ruined our perceptions of love, our perceptions of authoritarian figures in our lives, our perceptions of God. You know, I've seen so much stuff about just God's not real, blah, blah, blah. In every way possible, I just think social media has ruined my generation. It stripped us of what God called us to do, because social media has become what we listen the call for our lives to be. Social media calls our name and we're just like, oh, you know, but when we hear what God's calling us to do, it's so easy to ignore that with billions of people on the internet, you know? But yeah, I would say social media has just been really hard. It's hard because you can't just of, oh, my son will delete this app, he'll become better and actually start listening to me. It won't be that at all. But I think what will help a lot is, how can I get my kid off social media without having to discipline them? And to that, I would say, like, make more meaningful experiences with your kid. You know, if you're always working and you're always busy on your own phone, setting that example too, or you're yelling at them, or you're just never in the house, you know, you're not going to have any experiences to get that kid off their phone. And that's how kids feel isolated and stay on their phones when you are there. So I would just say to kind of like start getting kids off their phones with just like schedule meaningful things, like go to the mall with me. Hey, you want to have a lake day? Let's go to the beach together. Let's grab dinner, you know, because that's what we want. We want a moment with you where there's no distractions. There's no millions of voices talking to us. There's no distractions for you either. And it's just time with you. You know, meaningful time will grow a kid so much. Like, it really will. You know, I know when my mom, you know, gets off a long week of work, even her simple, let's go get ice cream together, is so meaningful to me. You know, I don't even have a thought to go on my phone. And, you know, we have meaningful conversations, and a lot of parents just think that's not important to kids anymore, but you won't know that unless you try it, you know?
That's really good. That's really good. I want to run something by the both of you. because it goes back to some things that you said, Livvy, and how parents handle the tough stuff. And most of them don't do it very well. And this informed me as I was a kid. I was 16 at the time. And how my father handled this informed me to the point when my daughter had one of those, I can't believe you did it moments. I responded exactly how my dad did, because I remember how positively impactful it was for me. I got arrested for shoplifting. And of course, handcuffs, everything in the back of the police car. And so I'm thinking, I am about to die. There's no way I'm surviving this. And my parents were both out of town. And so, it's the cliche, parents are out of town, go get into trouble. And when I finally spoke with my father, I don't know exactly at what point in life it happened. It wasn't like a week later, but it was like within a day or so. I will never forget the first words out of his mouth. And they were, how are you doing? Are you okay? Bruh. I started bawling because I was not expecting that. I was expecting, what were you thinking? Didn't we teach you better than that? That was what I was expecting. It is not what he gave me. And that impacted me. And so I've always tried, that doesn't mean, I failed plenty as a parent, but I've always tried to, when I knew this is a big one, I've always tried to respond that way. And my daughter came to me, I won't say what it is, but my daughter came to me with something that if I were to share it, both jaws would drop and you'd be like, what? And that's how you responded? But I just remembered that response. And so I would say to parents, you don't have to, most kids, when they come, I know I said I wasn't going to say much. I'm just going to say this one thing.
No, go right ahead. It's good.
You don't have to, a kid already knows what they did was wrong. Oh, my dad did not have to say, what were you thinking? I already knew what I did was wrong. And then for him to come in and to say, how are you doing? I will never forget that. That was 42 years ago. And I will never forget that moment. So anyway, let me turn this back over to you guys. Thoughts on that?
I mean, very powerful. I think that if many parents approach situations like that, we'd have a much different problem going on right here. We wouldn't have a problem, I think with my generation, it's so much of just in the head and struggle and turmoil from social media, from our current circumstances that, we kind of use our surroundings as a place to outlet that. And, whether your surroundings is substance, bad group of friends, harming yourself, just bad practices in general, that's your outlet. But I wouldn't say that's necessarily the cause of why you're doing it. The cause is in here,
good.
I think sometimes like older generations will be like, oh, well, they're doing drugs because they're in the wrong crowd. And it's like, oh, wait, no, that kid's doing drugs and is in the wrong crowd because he has a lot of stuff going on in his head. And so just to approach your kid with just, like I said, a loving perspective, and just to come from like a loving place of, hey, how are you doing first before I discipline you, because I think it just comes back to what I said, like, you can't listen if you don't love. Like, I really do think that what your dad did was so powerful because it showed you in the moment, like, he not only cares about like the situation and fixing this, but he cares about my situation and fixing me. So I think that was really powerful. Yeah.
Praise God. Joe?
I kind of want to flip that on its head and ask a what if you will. What if your dad hadn't responded like that? What if he had come out as the big bad wolf, as to say, and just come in guns blazing? And what if he did it not because, obviously he didn't hate you or anything like that, but out of fear, because I had all that fear and stuff. I was talking earlier about emotions that you start to get when you're younger, and how when you're older you have experience to be able to deal with that. But if I saw my son coming in, if he was I don't know if you were handcuffed still or behind bars, or you were released with some kind of authority figure when he had to come get you.
No, he was out of town.
Okay.
He was out of town. Right. It was on the phone.
Okay. So he had to call, at least somebody of authority had to be part of that phone call at least. And so I'd be scared, and how you respond in that, you would want it to be like your dad did, which he did a great job in there. But I wonder about the parents that do mess up in that moment. Is it always, do the younger generations realize we're not perfect all the time? Because even though we do have that experience when we're older and stuff, we do deal with strong emotions. We do deal with things that hit us hard, no matter how ready you may think you are. And I think in those moments where we do mess up, we need to teach the younger generations that, hey, we're not perfect either, but we're trying to, work through these times. And so even if we do mess up in that moment, don't give up. Keep trying to talk to the youth, show, hey, I messed up, but work with them, talk with them. Because, it's not easy. A kid messes up something big. And you love them, you care about them, you want to see them do right. And in that moment, it's not just, I know when I had a player mess up or youth of mine mess up, I didn't feel just like they messed. I felt like I personally messed up, and it's a frustration on myself. And I think it's key for the parent in that case to show, I feel this with you. I'm with you on that. And, that being there with them is key.
I would say that I think a big thing to just kind of lessen the gap between our two generations is humility. I think that both sides need to just like humble themselves to a place where vulnerability happens. I think my generation just feels like they have to be the top dog in everything and have to just have it all together because kids on social media do, that we compare ourselves to.
That's good.
I mean, our pride and our egos are inflated, and we're very fragile on the inside, but we don't want to let anyone know that. And we don't even want our parents to know that, we want to look good in front of our parents. We want to make them proud. And, in that you become very prideful and you can become very egotistical and self-obsessed. And so I think for my generation, I would say we have a huge humility and vulnerability problem. And that we need to come to a place where it's like, I'm not perfect. And I really need to go to someone about this. And let's say for the older generations, you guys definitely feel like you need to have it all together, especially father figures. Like, you guys feel like you need to just man the house and keep everything together for everyone to provide. And, that's hard, and a lot of people don't touch on like, older male struggles because it's just taboo. And I think that's stupid. But I think if a father was vulnerable with his son and said, hey, look, I'm struggling with this too. This is why we can work together. This is why I'm here for you, because you can be here for me in this moment. That would make these conflicts go over so much easier, because it's hand in hand. I'm here for you. You're here for me. Let's get through this, deepens relationships, deepens the intimacy, and deepens the trust. If I'm telling you about all your problems and I don't know a single thing about you, I don't really know if I can trust you. But if you kind of give me some of your problems, it's like, oh, well, we have this relationship going. We have this balance to our relationship.
Wow. Well, I'm going to start to land this plane, and I could tell you, I could listen to both of you guys talk all day. I've learned so much. I have a page of notes here, and just questions and things, not questions, but comments that I wanted you guys to kind of unpack. And so maybe I can invite you guys back down the road. We'll see how the feedback from the episode goes, and then, you know, maybe come back and tackle some of these things, and I would gladly send them out because there's just so much goodness. But what I would like to do is I want to give each of you an opportunity to kind of share a thought or leave the people with something that you want them to walk away from. So we've been on here. I think this episode will be close to an hour, probably not quite an hour, but close to it once the intro and outros are connected. But I want the people, what do you want them to walk away with? They only get one thing. What do you want them to walk away with? And I'd like Joe to go first, because I want Livvy to have the last word on this particular topic or this particular question.
So the last thing I like just to remember is kind of what I went on earlier. It's okay for any generation not to know everything, but to be willing to work with each other, all the generations, younger or older, to make each other better, be better by realizing that each generation has strength and being able to talk to each other and grow stronger through talking to each other, just overall.
Yeah, that's great. I would just touch on how if you don't want a distant relationship, then you can't have distant conversations. I think it's really important to be upfront with one another, to going back to the humility, to just humble yourselves to a level playing field where, each person is a participant in lessening this gap, and each person is a participant in getting rid of conflict and getting towards a resolution and to growing a relationship. It has to be both parties wanting this or it won't work. And I think at the end of the day, you really have to come from a place of love in everything you do with the younger generation, because we are, as people would call us, we're snowflakes, we're fragile, but it is a little bit true. There's merit to that. We're struggling right now. We have so many confusing things going on in our lives through technology and through our surroundings, through the music we listen to. And so we are touchy, and the older generation is going to have to understand that if you come from a place of discipline and accusation, it won't solve anything. I would really I think listening, love, empathy, and willing to work through things together is key. Is key to getting rid of this gap.
Oh, praise God. So, Livvy, you just taught me something. So this word snowflake, I've heard it frequently.
Yes.
But people are called snowflakes because they're fragile.
Yeah, just snowflakes because like the smallest things that a normal person wouldn't be set off by, they're set off by, just like, I don't like your hair. I'm bald. I'm already crying. Hand me tissues. That's a snowflake, at least to me.
I had no idea. I didn't have any idea.
That's funny.
Yeah, I was curious. I heard it. I hear people say it, but I had no clue where the term came from. But it makes sense, Did you know that, Joe?
Yes.
I did not. I did not. I'm learning on here. So how can people contact you? Will you give them your social media if you want them on there? If you don't, that's fine. They can email you or they can just contact me and I'll contact you guys. I don't mind being your contact agent.
That would work for me. So yeah.
My social media, I'm very active on Instagram, Livvy McLean, Livvy McLean. People feel free to come in my DMs. I love to talk to people, make new friends, and help people out. That's why I kind of hopped on this podcast, because I really do think there's a problem, and I hate it for both sides. I hate that older generations feel distant from their kids and feel like they're not good enough parents or coaches or mentors. And I hate it for the younger generation and how we feel isolated and walking alone in this, and the truth is we're not alone. We have each other, but we just need to figure out a way to make it work.
Joe?
Yeah, just getting to you. I am actually, as I'm getting older, I walked away from most of my social media. So I really have tried to not get on it as much. Trying to just live my life through my faith, and so I've just been kind of off. I really don't have any active, you could say, at the moment. So kind of old school with it. So.
Well, that's all right. So if you guys out there want to reach out to Joe, you could reach out to me on our platforms that are always tagged in the notes here, and I will get any message to him. And then if he wants to connect with you, then there are ways to connect. It's just not social media. So, well, thank you guys for your time.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it here. And, who knows, maybe we'll get back on here. I kind of like this kind of setup here where, I'm the old geezer. We're 20 years apart, the 20-year club. Because you're 37, right, Joe?
Yes.
And you're 16, turning 17 tomorrow. So you're 17
Mm-hmm.
and I'm 58. That's 20 years apart.
Wow.
The 20 year, we may have a new podcast.
Yeah, perfect time to go on. So
That's cool. I might even call this the 20-year club. And people can figure out what that is at the end of the podcast. I like that. So, but thank you guys for your time, and we will see you next time.
yeah, thank you so much for having me. Great discussion. Yeah, thank you.
Good to be on.